Hi there. My name's Andrew Huber, and I'm a liaison specialist with the Library of Congress Veterans History Project. I'm going to give you a brief overview of VHP and how your classroom can participate, both by using us as a research source and how you can interview veterans from your community to actually create your own primary sources to donate to the Library of Congress. Now, the Veterans History Project was created in the year 2000 by a unanimous act of Congress. The mission they gave us was to collect, preserve, and make accessible the personal accounts of American war veterans so that future generations can hear directly from them and better understand their selfless service. Now, that was the text of the bill that made us a thing. But what it actually means is that we are an archive of stories of code talkers, stories of code breakers, stories of fighter pilots, stories of sweethearts, all kinds of stories from World War I all the way up to Iraq and Afghanistan and everything in between. Now, every veteran has a unique story, and we want to hear all of them. VHP is not just for combat Medal of Honor action stories. It's for the truck drivers, the mess cooks, the computer programmers, everyone who had a job to do in the military and served honorably. We want to hear their story because their story is unique and their story is important. Now, the way we collect those stories is through oral history interviews, correspondence, photographs and artwork, along with diaries, journals, and memoirs. Now, oral history interviews make up the bulk of our collections, but we absolutely love it when veterans donate correspondence, photos, artwork, and diaries. And the reason for that is because oral history interviews are oftentimes happening 30, 40, 50, in the case of World War II, 75 years after the fact. Now, over 75 years, over that long period of time, memories can become hazy, details can get left out, things can be exaggerated, but correspondence and photos, and diaries, those were created as those events were happening, so they capture them much more accurately. So if you have a veteran who wants to donate some of these materials, we will happily accept them. If they do want to donate the materials, they do have to be original. We do require original documents for several reasons. Number one is that we are uniquely suited to preserve and conserve and restore these documents. Now, in the background, you can see the World War I diary of Albert John Carpenter. When we received that diary, it was in pretty rough shape. There was extensive water damage, there was tears on the paper, there was ink so faded that you couldn't even read what it said. And we were able to give that to our expert restorationists, and they were able to fix the tears with a special Japanese rice paper. They were able to find out that missing writing via a UV light process that exposed the faded ink, and they were able to bring it back to almost pristine condition. So that's one big reason, is that we want these materials to be available for generations to come, for as long as the Library of Congress is around. And most private citizens just aren't set up with the expertise or the materials to make sure that these last for hundreds of years to come. The other reason is that we are an extremely secure repository. All of our materials are held in climate-controlled spaces, under ideal conditions, and they are physically secure. Now, why is that important? Well, Shirley Carpenter, who donated Albert Carpenter's diary, very shortly after she donated it, Hurricane Katrina came through and completely destroyed her house, including putting 5.5 feet of water in the closet where the diary was kept. Now, if she hadn't donated that to us, it would have been gone, completely gone, and there would be nothing anyone could do to get it back. But because it was donated to us, we are able to preserve that and make that available for future generations. Now, when you donate a collection like Shirley Carpenter did, or like your class might be doing, or when you're using us for research, what does a collection actually look like? Well, let me show you. So this is the VHP collection of Edith Renee Porter Stewart. She was an Iraq War Navy veteran, and she donated her story with oral history video interview, photos, a poem she wrote, along with written memoirs. And now you can see all of this is available right here on our website. And every veteran who donates their story to VHP gets a page just like this on our site with their service information, what wars they served in, what era they served in, what branch they served in, what units they served in, what locations they served in, along with the materials that they donated, like their oral history interview. If they do donate photos, we can also put those up as well. But like I said, every veteran who contributes to this project gets their own page just like this. Now, how can you use VHP in your classroom? Well, number one, you can use our interviews and primary source sets as supplemental material to history and literature lessons. So if you are teaching about World War II, or if you are reading a book like The Things They Carried, you can actually go to our website and look up the interviews of veterans who served in situations like you're teaching about. So your students can hear about these historical events directly from people who actually served there. Now, one good way to do that is using our primary source sets. These primary source sets are available on the Library of Congress website in the classroom materials section. And you can see there's a wide variety of different materials from Vietnam to World War II and beyond, and everything in between. You can click on one of these. It'll take you right to the interview and all the different materials, and everything you need is right there. You can also use VHP for research. Assign your students to write reports or papers using us as a primary source. And there's a couple of ways you can do that. Number one is to use what we call our Experiencing War pages. These are online exhibits. Each exhibit revolves around a particular theme, and we've curated the interviews from our collections that we think best represent that theme. So you can see here, this is post 9/11 veterans who joined after 9/11 or as a result of 9/11. And you can see right here all of the different things that we have. So for Shiloh Harris, we've got a video interview and photographs. You can click on his name and it'll take you right to his collection. For Lee Lane, we've got an audio interview and photographs, and all that stuff is right there. You can also find these either by alphabetical list or by theme. So we've got over 70 different themes ranging from D-Day to POWs to women veterans, Hispanic veterans, African-American veterans, all sorts of things, and some even more unique stuff like chaplains, helicopter pilots, really anything you can think of, it's probably here in our Experiencing War collections. The other thing that you can do is to use our search function. So we actually have a search function on our website that goes directly to our backend database, and you can search by name, service location, what unit they served in. You can even search by the affiliation of the donor. So if your classroom ends up creating interviews and sending them into us, you can find all of those easily in one place with our search. Now you can also dive down even further. So when you search for something, you can limit your search by these different categories. So say we are looking for a veteran named Jones, who served in World War II, who was part of the Army and was a prisoner of war. Click all of those checkboxes, search, and boom. We have several different Joneses who served, 12 different Joneses who served in World War II and were prisoners of war. And you can just go down the list, click on the digitized collection, watch their videos right there. So it really couldn't be easier to find these. And like I said, you can search by conflict, by unit. So if you're looking for these very specific categories, they're all right there. Now, beyond just using this for research, you can also contribute to our collections. You can have students interview veterans in the classroom to create their own primary sources, and those can actually go on a student's college application because they created a primary source that resides in the Library of Congress. Now, once these are collected, they don't just sit on a shelf somewhere. There have been over 850 books written using us as a main source, and that doesn't even include things like documentaries. Ken Burns used us extensively for the war and the Vietnam War. People have used us for nonfiction books, fiction books, textbooks, academic papers, all sorts of things. So when you contribute these collections, they're not just sitting on a dusty shelf somewhere, they are being used and part of our nation's living history. So if your classroom does decide to join in and interview veterans to contribute to our collections, it really couldn't be easier. All you need is a veteran willing to share their experiences, and that could be a student's family member, that could be a veteran faculty member, it could be anyone from the community who's a veteran. Other than that, all you need is some sort of recording equipment, a quiet room, could even be your classroom, a VHP field kit, which is available on our website, loc.gov/vet/kitmenu.html, or I'm going to give you my email address at the end of this, and you can email me directly for a copy. Now, what the field kit has is detailed instructions on how to conduct the interview, a whole list of sample questions, and of course, since we are the government, there are a few required forms that the veteran and the interviewer do need to fill out. You can see in this photo, this is from Idaho Falls High School. I actually just did a workshop with them last month to teach the students how to do these interviews. And in this photo, they are busy, hard at work, learning how to use the recording equipment, writing customized questions for the veterans, and doing background research on the veterans, where they served, when they served, so they can be more educated about the questions that they ask. One big question we get is who can participate? For standard VHP collections, any US veteran, as long as they served in the US in one of the 5 branches, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Merchant Marines, and Uniform Medical Service and Coast Guard are also included as well. For interviewers, anybody who is in 10th grade or above can ask the questions, but that doesn't mean that students who are not in 10th grade yet can't participate. If you are teaching a classroom that is below 10th grade, then you or a teacher's assistant or a parent volunteer can ask the questions, and the students can write the questions and operate the recording equipment. Now, veterans do need to tell their own stories. However, there's one exception to that. If the veteran is deceased as a result of their service, then a family member can tell their story on their behalf. It's pretty easy. We try and make this as easy as possible. There are really only 2 rules. Number 1 is what we call our 30-20-10 rule. And that is if you were doing an oral history interview, it must be at least 30 minutes. If you are writing an original manuscript, it must be at least 20 pages. And if you are donating photos, letters, or pieces of original art, there must be at least 10 of those. And you can mix and match with those 5 photos, 5 letters, however you want to do that. One important thing to note is that once you hit one of these, the rest of the requirements do not matter. So if a veteran does a 30-minute interview and wants to donate 5 photos, that's fine because they already qualified with the 30-minute interview. If they want to donate 15 letters and not do an interview at all, that's fine as well, because they already qualified with those letters. So you only have to hit one of these checkboxes right here. The rest, after that, the rest don't matter. The only other rule is that when you donate these interviews to us, they have to be on a CD, DVD, USB drive, mini DV tape, or a cassette tape, and there has to be 1 interview per piece of media. So if you do 5 interviews, you have to donate 5 USB drives or 5 DVDs. In terms of recording equipment, really anything is fine. If all you've got is a dusty old cassette recorder you pulled from your attic, that's totally fine. If you want to use the voice memo recording app on your phone, that's fine. You can get very inexpensive digital audio recorders online for $15, $20. Most people do choose to use smart devices such as an iPad, an Android tablet, or the cell phone that you probably have in your pocket right now. That's totally fine as well. If you have access to higher quality professional recording equipment, even better, but it is by no means required. A lot of times, if your school has a media production department or a school news station, a lot of times they will have high quality recording equipment that you can borrow or partner up with them, and that they will let you, that they will operate the equipment and let you use. So get creative, talk to the different departments, or if you just want to use your phone or an audio recorder, that's totally fine as well. I did mention that we've got these sample questions available. They are an excellent framework for first-time interviewers who have never done an oral history interview before. They go all the way from the veteran's early life to joining the military, to their jobs and deployments in the military, through separation of service and the military's effect on their later life. Now, these questions are by no means required. In fact, we encourage you to go off script and create your own questions. That's one of the really cool things that students can do, is research the veterans and research the era they served in to create these customized questions to get a really good interview. The only thing that is required is what we call the lead. And that's when you state the veteran's name, the interviewer's name, the date, and the location of the interview. And I like to get that all out of the way at the beginning. Start off with, my name is Andrew Huber. I'm here interviewing Lieutenant Dick Winters. It is February 17th, 2022, and we are in Washington, D.C. And once you get that out of the way, you're all done. You can go right into the questions. Speaking of questions, if you are making up your own questions, what are some good questions to ask? Well, first off, good questions are open-ended questions. Instead of asking, were you drafted? Ask, describe for me how you felt when you were drafted. Instead of asking, did you go to Vietnam? You can ask, what was a typical day like for you in Vietnam? Walk me through from getting up to going to bed. What happened? Also, relationship-oriented questions. Who was that drill sergeant who made your life miserable in basic training? Who was that mentor who took you under their wing and taught you everything you needed to know? Who was your best friend while you were serving? What other friends did you make? Relationships really stand out in veterans' minds, and they really get some good stories behind them. Same thing with sensory-oriented questions. What did it sound like the first time you were in combat? What did the food taste like? Was the chow hall in basic training the worst food you've ever had, or were you just grateful to have a hot meal after a long day of marching? What were your favorite MREs? What were your least favorite MREs? What crazy concoctions did you make swapping for different ingredients? Veterans have these incredibly strong memories tied to senses like smell or taste or sound. Also, emotion-oriented questions. What was the bravest thing you saw in the military? What was the funniest prank that you pulled, or the funniest prank someone pulled on you? What was the scariest thing that happened to you while you were in the military? Now, of course, when you're asking emotion-oriented questions, you do have to be careful about the veteran's emotional comfort and mental state, especially if the veteran is dealing with post-traumatic stress. Now, not every veteran does deal with post-traumatic stress. Not every veteran has had traumatic experiences. Not every veteran will find it difficult to talk about those experiences, but some do, and it's important that you be very respectful of them when they do. So if a veteran needs to take a break, get some water, get some tissues, compose themselves, if it's easier for them if you leave the room while they do this, all of that is fine. You just want to be aware of the veteran's mental and emotional state and make sure that they are as comfortable as possible. Now, one of the really cool things about the Veterans History Project is that the veterans retain all copyrights to their stories. When you're filling out those forms in the field kit, you'll notice that the only thing the release forms do is give us the permission to hold on to those stories and make them available for researchers. If the veteran gives you permission, you can do all sorts of other things on your own with these interviews. So a lot of classrooms put their interviews on their Facebook page. Sometimes they'll make a YouTube page to display these. Sometimes they'll even go all the way and create their own entirely new webpage to display these interviews. Some even use them as the basis for creative works like a podcast, talking about the interviews that they do and the stories that they've heard. The possibilities are endless. As long as the veteran gives you permission, you are free and actually encouraged to display these however you want. So what now? Now that we're at the end of the presentation, since I can't take questions, this is my email address, ahub@loc.gov. You are absolutely free to email me at any time if you have any questions, or if you need any help using the primary source sets, using our search function, using our archives for research, or ideally, if you want to get your classroom started actually collecting these interviews from veterans in your community. Now, one thing I can do to help you out with that is I can actually set up a guest lecture or a student workshop at absolutely no cost to your school or your classroom. If you're in the DC area, I can actually come in person to do the guest lecture or the workshop. Or if you're not in the DC area, we can set up a time to do it remotely via Zoom. Those workshops usually last about an hour to an hour and a half, but they can be tailored to your class period. So if you have a shorter class period or longer block scheduling, that's completely fine. I'm more than happy to tailor the presentation to your needs. So just send me an email, ahub@loc.gov. If you want to set up one of those workshops, if you want a field kit, if you want those sample questions, anything you need, it is my job to help you get started, help you use VHP in your classroom, and help you collect these interviews. So now all that's left is to go out, use our research, use our database, and go interview those veterans in your life and your community. So thank you very much for having me today. It was an absolute pleasure to be here. And if you need me at all, once again, ahub@loc.gov. Do not hesitate to get in contact with me. So thank you very much.